Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's live call. Morgan and I here for you. As always, if you're new here, I know there's a few new faces, go ahead and chat into the chat box that you're new. We just want to know who's new tonight and who's been on before. So go ahead and chat in new if you're new. And we do have an exciting video to share with everybody. So that's why you should be seeing our screen and seeing that big number 3. We wanted to give you a little sneak peek at a rough draft of the intro for this weekly call moving forward.
3, 2, 1.
How to build your trust, your authority, and tell your story so that you're the differentiated provider in your community. Everything I'm doing in my practice plus everything that my clients are doing across the country. I know you made the right decision for your practice. Just like my practice and the clients across the country, these marketing examples you took advantage of are going to help you grow in 2022 and beyond. You have a little excitement out of that, Morgan?
Yeah, I love that. Every time I watch that video, I love it. Go ahead and stop.
Yeah, perfect. How's everybody doing today? Chatting, doing good, doing bad.
Appreciate you all being here. John's new. John, thanks for being with us. Michelle, thanks for being here again. Appreciate you. Steve's on. Got a good group here tonight.
Yeah, logging in. Hopefully they'll come in. I did just a little bit of Instagram marketing tonight for this, kind of push it out there. We know it's at a time when some people are on their way home from the office, depending on East Coast, West Coast. You can always watch it on our Excellence in Audiology Academy online. So eiauniversity.com. It's our online modules. In addition, we also have it on my YouTube channel. So there's a lot of different places that you can watch a recording if you happen to be traveling, happen to be in the road. But we definitely dedicate this time. We've dedicated some videographer hours to making an exciting conversation to help you with nuggets, to help you with concept systems in your practice. So thanks for joining. Go ahead and make it as interactive as possible. Chat in questions, chat in topics. And what do you have for us tonight, Morgan?
Yeah, we're going to talk about subtraction. Before we jump in though, John's home, so it's wine time.
Okay.
Maybe we should have wine time.
Yeah, we should turn his video on. He's probably sitting on the couch with
maybe 30 minutes or an hour. Then we'll turn on John's. After John's had a bottle, then we can see how John's doing. Michelle's excited to see you.
Okay.
She's going to see you down in Phoenix this
weekend. Glad to have
weekend
Michelle back
at the marketing boot camp. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, tonight we're going to talk about subtraction. So where did the idea of subtraction come into play for you, Jared? Where did the idea of subtraction come in?
Sure. Well, I mean, as entrepreneurs and visionaries and business owners, right, we have a lot of constant pressures on us. And last week on the call, we talked about consistency. And consistency is a little bit more scalable, a little bit easier to implement if you don't have too much on your plate. And what I've seen in my own practice, in my own life with multiple businesses, working with great entrepreneurs like yourself, is that we have a lot on our plates and we often overcommit. And I think the first time, Morgan, that we heard the concept or the theory of subtraction was with Kathy Colby down in Phoenix when we were getting Colby certified.
Right.
And one of her biggest nuggets, I think it's her top 5 rules.
Yeah, top 5 rules for trusting your instincts.
So top 5 rules for trusting your instincts was to commit, but to commit to very little. And I think that's very hard it was hard for me. It's still hard for me. I now have to turn away more than I accept because of those pressures. But hers was commit, but commit to very little. And the words we've used recently in my weekly facts, in the weekend update with coaching clients, is this idea of subtraction. How do we eliminate things from our vision? How do we eliminate systems and projects that don't work? How do we eliminate staff members that aren't performing? And so I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's one of those for me that's so simple, but it's so hard to master. It's one of those things that you can do it from time to time, but to do it consistently, because that's what you brought up about last week, is it's so difficult. Sure. But it seems like such a simple topic. Just don't say yes to everything. But after a little bit of time, we find ourselves saying yes at home and yes in our business and yes to business partners and yes to future business partners and investments in the next building and the next project. And then all of a sudden we're overwhelmed. And what do you hear all the time? I don't have time in my day. My day's too
I don't
busy.
have time. I have too much to do.
Yeah.
Jared, how do you accomplish so much? How do you have multiple businesses? How are you always, doing these things? And it's because I've learned to master as best as any human can master something, the concept of committing to very little or subtracting from Jared's Superman or subtracting from what you're doing, right? And making sure we're intentional, which was a topic a few weeks ago of intentionality. So the power of subtraction, I'm excited to talk about it. And just the first one that pops into my head, Morgan, unless you have questions, was how many offices you've either made me close in audiology or not let me purchase.
Yeah, I knew that one was coming. So made you close, I'm gonna go with, I think we're up to like 4 now.
Okay,
So 4 offices that he's closed. They were offices that were productive, by the way. They were offices.
productive and profitable.
Yeah, profitable. Thank you. Profitable offices that we convinced him to close. And then I can think of 2 offices that you were right on the cusp of purchasing or going into business with. And then I talked to you.
Well, I think the owner technically said he had 7,
Yeah.
but the reality was
Was
probably
2.
closer to 2.
2 actual brick and mortar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's been a handful. I mean, there's a ton of money there. If you look at the businesses that you closed and the businesses that could have been, there's definitely a few $1 million sitting out there.
And what do you think? I mean, you're around me more than most people here. What do you think of me saying no, or when we've subtracted those things from my responsibilities and what that's empowered us to do here as coaches with the business owners on tonight? Like, you've seen it kind of firsthand. What do you see?
Well, it's not easy, that's for sure. And I think what I see a lot of times with other business owners is that conversation never happens in general. But somebody chatted in and said Jared is Superman, which I agree with. I mean, he does have a photogenic memory, but that conversation doesn't even happen sometimes. So there might be a business owner out there that's considering doing a new deal, going into business, starting a new location, scaling, and they're not even having a conversation with their leadership team. They might have a leadership team, they might have managers, and they're not even having a conversation, which is sort of the first mistake I think you could make. Now, if you are going to have that conversation, make no mistake, that was a hard conversation for us to have. I mean, the one conversation we had what, 7 hours in a car from Arizona to home. And I think all 7 hours we spent, but what if this happened? And what if this happened? We could do it this way and we could do it this way.
No, you were saying, but what if? I was like, let's go.
Yeah. But another one of Kathy Colby's rules for trusting your instincts is being obstinate, right? Doing nothing when nothing works, right? So I think first and foremost, I don't know if you can touch on that as a business owner. Why would you even trust me to have that conversation in the first place?
Sure. Well, for those of you on the call that are private coaching clients that work with us on a weekly and monthly basis, most likely you've adopted the Entrepreneur Operating System and you're using the 90.io software. What we taught you early on with that was anything that comes to your mind or your team's mind, whether it's a complaint, an issue, a brainstorm, should be listed in that software as an issue, right? Let's get everything in our heads as visionaries out on the table so that when we have our L10 meetings, when we have our monthly meetings, when we have our quarterly planning sessions, right, we're having a conversation with our team that is the truth and the reality of what's in our head as a visionary entrepreneur. If we're only having a conversation about a small fraction of our thoughts and our feelings and our stresses and our issues, right, we might be missing the greatest part of our future legacy, our future business, our future potential. So step 1 for those of you that are private clients is to get all those issues, ideas, and brainstorms out there into your software, whether you use 90 like we recommend or you have some other management tool. Then during your quarterly planning session, you start letting the team come together and decide which of those issues, ideas, brainstorms, and problems are our focal point or are things holding us back from our 1 year, 3 year, and 10-year goal. So you can't have a conversation about the vision and the purpose of the company like we've talked about in the past if we're not playing with a full deck of cards. If we're not playing with that full deck of cards, we don't know where to focus for the next big leap of growth. Once we have those listed, then we have to start prioritizing, whether you call it elevate and delegate, whether you call it subtraction, whether you call it raising the top three, of where are we going to focus our energy so that we can be successful in either the most profitable or the most important part of our vision planning and execution.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the quarterly planning, because it was something, we have our quarterly planning as a coaching group. We're going to meet in Phoenix, the event that Michelle's coming down to. We have time set aside for us in a whiteboard room, internet hooked up, everything we need to go, so that we can kind of combine forces and say, what are our top three?
Sure.
What are we working on as an internal database as well?
And so we do, you're bringing in our clarity break, and some of the clients will be there, some won't. But that session happens every March. And if you look at our revenue, if you look at our community, if you look at our growth, that is always a springboard and catalyst for the rest of the year. Just like our quarterly planning session at the end of the year is always a springboard for our calendar the next year.
True.
So putting into place from last week's topic, consistency, from a few weeks ago, if you want to watch those that are on YouTube, from a few weeks ago, we talked about purpose. So if we have purpose, we use good systems, we have consistency, we're going to start making traction. The problem with making traction, and I know a couple of the people on the call tonight who have had a lot of success in the last 12 months in our group. And what does success breed? We want more, right? Us owners always say, that was great last year. That record was amazing, but I want more. So let's do all of these other things to have more. And what we want to talk about tonight is, how do you get more? How do you get more growth? How do you get more success? How do you get more traction? Not by adding things to people's plates, but by subtracting from people's plates.
And I think one thing that's important for me is, as somebody that really focuses on the communication side of things, is that it's not easy. And I think a lot of people avoid this conversation because it's not easy. Like us going to Phoenix as a team isn't going to be an easy conversation, because I have things I want to focus on in the business. You have things, Keith's going to have things, and so on. So for you as a business owner, what I'm trying to share with you so that you can be better at communication for your people is that when you round up the wagons with your leadership team and you start talking about what is coming down the pipeline, what the future looks like, and you're going through this process, and hopefully you get to the subtraction. But when you're building that list, you have to be upfront and honest with your team. You have to let it all out there so that your team can see the entire picture, and then you can focus back down on the three, and ideally the single most important thing that your business needs to focus on. But if you're not upfront, honest, and transparent with the team, they're never going to know what's in your head.
So, I mean, chat in if you're on. We do have some comments. Chat in. Are you first? My first question to everybody. I want to see responses from everybody. I want to light that chat board up. Are you sharing everything in your head as an entrepreneur, a visionary, a business owner? Are you sharing everything with your team, whether it's your leadership team and your close circle, or whether it's your whole team? It doesn't matter to me. Are you sharing everything?
Yeah, some honest question, honest answers there for sure.
And I mean, Morgan, you've seen it in me. How long has it been for me to build the trust and share with everybody on my team? Years, right? You have to be vulnerable.
Years and years and years. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a line. There are things that you're not going to share, right? But what's important to share? And I think what is important to share is your deepest desires with your business. And I think that's what, when you talk about being vulnerable, I think what's vulnerable, somebody chatted in earlier about, as a business owner, we want to be in control of everything. And I absolutely get that. I want to be in control of my children. But at some point, you have to have faith that the people that are around you are going to do the right thing, right? I think what that comes down to is being vulnerable for what your desire is with your business. What's your real why for the business, and sharing that real actual why. What's the passion behind the reason that you started a business, and be vulnerable about it, but then trust the people that work with you. And we see that a lot too. We see a lot of people that are actually admit to, I don't trust my staff enough. And that's why we don't want to share absolutely everything.
And imagine, right, that the simplest analogy we use is, if we put 8 people on a raft or a canoe, and we don't share with them the destination, the goal, the expectation, the tools to use, the system, the wind speed, and you just say, start paddling. Are we going to be aligned and at our maximum speed?
Yeah.
Or are you going to be sitting there with people going every direction? Yeah. Right. And no wonder businesses fail. No wonder entrepreneurs are burned out. No wonder there's a struggle. And what I want to do with this call and what I'm here for you in this call is, what did Jared do over the last 12 years, 13 years now? What was successful? What was failure? What did we have to recalibrate on? And we have those systems, tools, and processes now. And that's why this year, 2022, we're sitting here ready to share it with you, as opposed to in the midst of the battle over the last 12 years.
Yeah. So I want to get into like some of the changes that I've seen, right? Because
Sure.
I think what's easy for a lot of you business owners, I've seen Jared's fantastic at it. I've seen a lot of the business owners that chatted in over there. I know you're good at it because I know you personally as well. You guys are great at coming up with ideas. So like if we need somebody to vision board what's next for the business, there's a reason that we call you guys visionaries, is because you can see it. Man,
We picked Dr. Turry for that one.
Yeah, Dr. Turry's fantastic at it. And we want that. I want someone like Dr. Turry on my team because he's a big dreamer.
Yeah.
And so if he can dream big, then we can backlog with the idea. So I think the tricky part where I've seen you come into place, you have that entrepreneur operating system. You can dump all of your ideas, thoughts, vision board, everything you want to dump in there. But then you have to pick the top three. And ideally, you're going to get down to the single most important part of the business that you need to focus on first. So how did you go from, for those of you that have been in the Colby world, the quick start of the green bars that we often joke about, into a very focused mindset where, you know, here's all the things we could do, but here's the things we're actually going to do.
Well, so once everything's listed that pertains to your current business, right? And so it's harder if you have multiple businesses because you don't want to blur lines. Once they're in there, the leadership team is going to start, and I was telling Morgan earlier, what they're going to do is they're going to walk around with a different color marker, and they're basically going to rate all of the issues, brainstorms, concepts, and ideas onto what they think is the most important in order to achieve the vision of the company. And every time I've seen this happen in a quarterly planning session, the top 3 to 5 things rise up like you can't believe.
Yep.
Right. And whether it's, you know, sales and training growth, which is what we do, whether it's sharing the vision and the 10-year goals better, right? The top 3 things that are most important always rise to the top. And those are where you want to focus your energy. And as Tony Robbins has told us, right, energy flows where focus goes. So once we're all in alignment and in agreement of what the most important steps are, getting traction and having growth has become pretty easy, at least in my mind, right? Last year alone, we started 2 new businesses, right? This year we have investments we're getting ready for. We're expanding into Arizona. We have other models ready.
Yeah.
So like the speed of traction speeds up once you have clarity of purpose. So I go around, the leadership team helps me determine which of the 3 or 5 things. Last year, all honesty, all transparency, it was the documentation of process, right? We weren't in a position to scale appropriately because we didn't have every process, every little micro movement handled. And once we took a year to step backwards, document everything, this year, we're ready to add 2 or 3 different market territories because we're so confident in the system, the process, and the people, right? So have your leadership team help you decide which are the 5 most important things and give all your energy and focus to those, or simplify it down even further.
So I have to ask, as the business owner a year ago, if you put yourself back into that headspace, because I think this is probably something they're going to be wondering, did you agree with process being the number one thing? Like, what if my team puts dots on things that I think are totally out of left field?
Well, I mean, luckily, I think because I've shared the purpose of expansion in more clinics and more states, because I clearly articulated that and shared it, the leadership team came back and said, yes, these are the most important, and process was one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Process was one of them. Training and recalibration plan was one of them. And staff consistency was one of them. So there was 3 things. If these 3 things happen, Jared, us as a leadership team are on board to hit pedal to the metal and grow.
And I think that is the key factor, is that your why for the business, your passion, your directive, what you're trying to accomplish with the growth to scale, the 42 million, is clearly defined.
Mhm.
It's documented. It's known by all. Like that's in everything from the interview process to the onboarding process, training, recalibration is all mentioned from that company's why. And I think that's a great starting point for them as well. Is do you have it documented and is it followed by all? Because
Yeah.
that too is from the entrepreneur operating system.
Yeah, and I think what you have to really look at, and what I find with other visionary owners that are on the same journey as I've been on, but maybe a couple years behind, is that it's not documented or they change too often, right? And when you start to change the vision or the plan or the future outlook, your team is probably, we laugh all the time, 2 years behind you.
Yeah.
So if you decide in March to change from what was in February, it's going to take 24 months before that whole Titanic shifts back to your new vision.
Yeah.
And so you, to Kathy Colby's point, you have to be obstinate in your vision and you have to stick with your vision.
Yeah.
And then your team can align behind you and you can take off with speed and consistency.
Yeah. And
Right.
we've lived that, by the way, just to say that again, we've literally lived this. When we change something in our business, on average, we've found the rest of the team or the people or the trainees are about 2 years behind
Mhm.
from being proficient, good at it, acceptable, thumbs up, you're amazing.
Sure.
And that comes with every change. You change the name of your business,
Sure.
2 years. You change the name, the way you do patients or the way you do business or the product that you sell, 2 years.
And the one thing I would tell you about 2 years is it took me 2 years.
Sure.
And if you're a great student that asks great questions of great mentors and people that have done it before you, your goal should be to take 2 years and to shrink that down to as little time as possible. So if it took Jared 2 years to do it and you follow a very similar plan, maybe you can get it down to 6 months for a name change. Maybe you can get your onboarding and training plan down to 12 months instead of 24 months. So the goal of this call, the goal of being a student, the goal of coaching is to learn from people that have been there before you, not to mimic the same mistakes that took me 12 years, cash flow shortages, management team walking out, brother leaving, chaos in your practice. You want to minimize that.
Yeah. So just to recap that part, because I don't believe that's being done yet, is a clearly established why, right? The purpose of the company shared with all, documented, and everybody's following it. Then you're going to ask your leadership team to go around and write down what they think is their top 3. Everybody's going to mark what they believe to be the most important. And if you feel like at the end of that exercise, everybody's focusing on the wrong thing, chances are you didn't articulate your why for the business properly. You need to go back again, redo your explanation of where you're trying to go with your company, and then redo that process until you feel like we're all on the same page.
I love it.
Awesome. I love that. I think I want to go back really quick to the comment that was put in as a business owner, we want to control everything, because I think that's going to stand in the way of subtracting. Because how hard is it as a business owner if I tell you you shouldn't be focusing on the cups in your office, but you're really, really focused on the fact that no, we're the only office in town that has actual coffee mugs, and that's like really important to us. And I'm trying to explain to you that it's not important. It's gonna be really hard for you to subtract those things.
Well, I truly don't think it's only an entrepreneur or only a visionary problem. I've seen holding on to everything is everybody's problem, top to bottom. So, in my own offices, I often hear from my staff, mostly the front office staff, right? Those are some of the best people on your team. They're in charge of the first interaction with all your patients or all your customers or clients. They answer every telephone call. Like that position has a lot of pressure on it.
Yeah.
Right. And they're often the first to say there's so much on my plate. And my job, when I use the power of subtraction, is to have conversations, whether that's your quarterly conversation with them or just as an on-site manager with them, to see what I can remove from their mindset, what I can remove from their plate, what I can remove from their to-do list and delegate somewhere else or eliminate it completely so that that team member can focus on the most important part of their job, right? And so in my office is the most important part to clean the coffee maker or to answer the telephone, right? And it might be, Morgan, that either or is a much easier decision than what of the 30 things I do a day do I eliminate?
Yeah, picking 1 out of 30 versus
1 out of 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is true. So Chris chatted in and said, I try to do it in my morning meetings, which I think is amazing, Chris. That in and of itself is amazing progress for you running those morning meetings. is you're really struggling with the marketing pieces. So if we look at Chris and we try to come from the perspective of subtraction, those people that are in that Monday morning meeting, Chris, you have to understand as the owner, their number one job isn't marketing. So if you're trying to update them, like this is the first thing we're doing in the morning, our huddle of the day is to get everybody motivated, jacked up, get through our rituals, make sure we're ready to work. And we're talking about marketing when their single most important part of the day is starting treatments with patients or being on the phone. Of course, they're going to be like, why do I need to listen to this? What does it mean? Chris is changing things. The business is chaos, right? So I think you have to come at that with, if you are going to talk about marketing, what is the single one line piece of information you can share with them on what is happening with marketing, not the whole enchilada, the single most important thing we need to share with them. Otherwise, that meeting is going to turn into a complaint fest where your staff is then saying, but you're changing the marketing, or this is new, or this is different, when none of them are marketers. So from their perspective, it's like, why are you telling me this in general? Even if I am a phones person, explain to me as a phones person, what do I need to know about the marketing? Not the click rates, the push throughs, or the videos that you put in there, or the videos you're going to shoot. I think that's so true.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want a little bit more clarity from Chris on, are you talking about you struggle with marketing and the subtraction of marketing? Are we talking still a subtraction or just marketing in general? So if you want to type in some clarity on that one, the power of subtraction in marketing is, I think the greatest example is with Swipe File 5X, right? So years ago, I launched this whole marketing automation system, started a business. We can talk about subtraction in that business, started a business, grew a business. And now we redid the marketing content. And if you remember years ago, the marketing automation system, the content that we created was very long-winded, right? It was very text heavy, and it was very much focused on dementia. I think we were one of the first leaders that I know of that was willing to put the words dementia, progressive degenerative diseases. I remember getting kicked out. Keith got kicked out of Facebook groups. I mean, we definitely caused a stir in our audiology community, just like we're going to do now in real estate, right? With Bobby.
I was going to say, now look at audiology.
Yeah, this is going to be different. Yeah. But what we did the second time around is we removed the heavy text content, right? We subtracted a lot of content. We made those emails and text messages much simpler.
You have less campaigns,
less tags, right? So we went back to a patient journey that was simpler, easy to follow. And by reducing tags and content and words, by reducing and eliminating and subtracting the word dementia from as much as we humanly possibly can, we made it simpler and we made it more effective. And I just looked last night. My new treatment start campaign has like a 76% open rate for emails, which is unbelievable.
Nice.
And the click-through rates were up at like 35, 36%. Where historically we were at 4 and 5% click-through rates. So when you look at the power of subtraction, whether it's in the patient journey, the management, the human resources, the vision of your company, shrinking things back to what is the most important part of your hour, day, week, or company will make you more profitable.
This is top of mind for me with a lot of clients I speak with on interviews as well, because when you're interviewing somebody, so I had a client just today I was on the phone with, and they're looking to hire an audiologist in their area. This audiologist is going to move from a different state to come and work for them. So there's some, undisclosed pressure of what does it work out like anybody feels. And we got a response here from Chris that we'll get right back to. And my advice to them, they were worried about this audiologist that works somewhere else. They're coming into their business and they were worried about, are they going to get our way of business? And I said, well, don't hire them if they don't. Don't let them on your team if they don't get it. You could make the interview process 2 weeks long. If they take another job, they take another job. They happen to be in a position that they don't need to hire as a 911, but her biggest fear was, what if I hire this person and they don't get it, or they don't understand that in my office, your job is to start treatments? I just said, why don't you just say that to her? Just say that on the phone and see what she says. And so that's our plan now. And I think even that is overlooked. That's what I meant by subtraction being such a difficult thing, even though it's such a small.
Well, look at Megan, right? Who you just hired on my team, audiologist up in New England. We ran an ad. We got the response. I think you hired him in 3 days.
Yeah,
it was really fast.
Yeah.
And everybody, I think a couple of the clients said, well, can we see the ad that you ran? Do you remember what the ad said that I ran for that position?
I think it was a message that said, hey, do you want a job here, basically?
Yeah, I mean, the post on LinkedIn was, looking for audiologist or hearing instrument specialist. Cash, like these were bullet points. There was no big paragraph. There was no big job description. Cash paying practice, no third parties, must start 3 treatments per week.
Treatment on day one.
Treatment on day one. It was like the 4 or 5 bullet points of what is the simplest, what do we do? Because if you're an audiologist applying for the job, you don't need 2 paragraphs of content. You don't need to know about OAEs and this and that and other things. What you need to know is the expectation. Right. And that was just, yet again, I took the power of subtraction and said, what do I really want to convey? And what I wanted to convey was we're cash pay, no insurance, no VA, no third parties, done. Right. And I think when you were doing interviews in Wisconsin a few weeks ago in real estate, it was the same thing. What's the good and the bad of the job? Not what are all the details? What's the core responsibilities? What do you do each hour, each day? It's what's the good and the bad?
Yeah, I love it. And that really is the simplest form of an interview for me. Why do you want to work here? And why do I want you to work here? And if we can articulate those 2 things to each other and that goes well, you have a job and I have a great hire. Because if you can explain to me why you want to work for me and I can explain why I want you to work for me, it doesn't really matter where you went to school, what you did before you got here. I don't care about any of the other stuff because we're in agreement about what business we're about to do together.
And I mean, just on while we're on hiring, it used to be one big long interview. Right. And now in our hiring and onboarding process, it's incremental steps. It's consistent steps in the right direction. So the people that interviewed with you last week then met Kaylin in my practice, and then they're showing up for a job shadow day. They still haven't been offered a job, right? We're making them jump through hoops to make sure that they're the right people.
And that's the beauty of always be hiring is you're not in a 911 crisis. But the point being, if you really want to avoid chaos in the practice, which was something we deal with all the time, is how do I avoid chaos in my business? Is you have to subtract out the nonsense. And I think that's going back to Chris's response here. So what he added back in is it's him sharing with his team on daily huddle. So it's a daily huddle that he's with his team. He's trying to share with them, hey, we're running this lyric campaign. And the line item of trial period has an asterisk and the treatment still begins on day 1, even though there's a trial period, right? So how do we get in and out of that meeting quickly? What's the change? What does it mean? How do we subtract all the nonsense out, assuming the team knows about lyric and all that other stuff? How do we get in and out? This is the first meeting we're having in the morning. For people, I assume on the phones or maybe even a doctor, how do we get in and out? How do we subtract the nonsense and just tell them what's the most important?
Sure. So I want to get to it. And I was reading the message here. So what you put there in the chat has quotations around the words trial period. So I think that's the issue here, right? And if this was next weekend at our marketing implementation boot camp in Phoenix, so if you want to come, we're going to have, real estate examples, we're going to have accounting examples, OTC examples. It's going to be a great event, but we're going to do a red pen session, right? And I would take this piece that Chris is talking about where it says trial period, and I would red pen out the words trial period.
Rip in half. Just kidding.
Right? Because your team is being caught up on trial period.
Yeah. And there's no trial. Chris said right after that, there is no trial. We're still, so I think you're going to get there. I don't want to.
No, go for it. Go for it.
The point here is, Chris, for me in a daily huddle is that we're still starting treatment on day 1. Right? Isn't that the goal? I mean, isn't that what you ended your message with, is that we are still starting treatment on day 1? You said still begin on day 1. So for me, I think you talk about this all the time with your staff, nothing's changing. Jared's right. We should probably ex-nay the word trial period because you're freaking people out. But at the end of the day, we're starting treatment on day 1. So what's the difference between last week in our office and the week that this marketing piece hits? We were starting treatment on day 1 a week ago. We're starting treatment on day 1 today. No change. Because that's probably a different conversation than what we've been having.
Sure.
And do you see how much more simplistic that is by subtracting out the nonsense? What we're doing is we're running a piece about lyric and we're starting treatment on day 1.
And what reminds me of in your conversation, and I think back to Colby change management, and I know I do a horrible job at it. If you have a team of fact finders, initiating fact finders and initiating systems people, red and blue bars, right? You have to talk about the things that are staying the same.
Exactly.
So yes, we have a new piece, but here's everything that's staying the same. We still treat hearing loss, right? We still treat tinnitus. We still start on day 1. You still are booking a 2-hour appointment, right? Here's all the things staying the same. The difference is that the picture on this flyer is a little bit different.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps, Chris. And then the only thing I would add there is on a daily huddle, From my point of view, let's just try to keep that huddle very short and concise. Keep it very strategic. And the goal for that daily huddle we talked about, I think on Fix It Friday last week, Chris, is to make sure that our mindset is correct for the day. So let's just not get distracted or hung up on lyrics or trial periods or anything like that.
Just another example. Hopefully everybody go ahead and chat in something that you want to subtract. Is there something in your daily routine, personally, professionally? Is there something in your company you want to subtract? Just by starting the conversation tonight, chat in below what you want to subtract, what you want help subtracting, or what you want accountability actually subtracting from, because we're going to meet a lot of you at the mastermind on March 11th and 12th, and we can definitely talk about it. So chat in, what do you want to subtract? What's the first thing in any part of your life you want to subtract? It reminds me, Morgan, even with real estate and accounting, right? A couple of weeks ago, we were having conversations, accountancy practice, business services practice, and real estate practice.
Yeah.
So in those models, right, owners want to start micromanaging, they want to start being involved with different aspects. And the questions I had in real estate were, well, how do you make money in real estate? You know what the answer is? More agents.
Duplicate agents.
Right? So if you're making X number of dollars per, let's say, audiologist, per CPA, per real estate agent,
Sure.
we can think about training plans. We can think about new chairs. We can think about new equipment. But at the core of the business, what actually makes money in your business? And if you kind of haven't looked at revenue per chair hour or revenue per provider, revenue per salesperson, I challenge you to go look at that number. Because the practices that I've seen grow in the last businesses and practices that I've seen grow in the last couple of years through a pandemic, were people that found out what their profit center was and did more of that, and found out what was clogging the growth pipeline and subtracted that, right? So that we have clarity of purpose on where we're going. And so I would just challenge you, what makes money in your business and what is noise in your business? And let's start subtracting the noise so we can focus on what does make money. And in my practice, things that we've subtracted over the years: locations, people who weren't the right mindset, weren't the right focus.
Yeah.
We've subtracted insurance.
Yeah, insurance was the perfect
Right.
example.
And that's a big one.
Yep.
We've subtracted pediatrics. We've subtracted cochlear implants. We've outsourced phone calls.
traveling clinic.
We outsourced phone calls. We realized that we don't make money on the telephone.
Right.
Right. Our business model makes money in the room one-to-one. So we outsourced phone call. We subtracted the number of phone calls from our business to another business.
You never did third party, but managed care,
Yep.
Al.
Years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So what are those things that you can subtract? What are those ideas and brainstorms you can subtract? So chat in something as small as you might think it is. What can you subtract from your plate in 2022 to get growth?
I know we have one on here that I'm specifically waiting for the chat in, because I would love for them to use the words that I think they would use. We were just with them.
Or don't subtract anything. Life's good. Is there another example, Morgan, we can kind of go into our realm now, not the clinics, right? Because I think this applies to any business, of Jared's crazy ideas.
Yeah.
That have been subtracted or delayed or pushed out further into the future.
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, that's why EOS and the EOS model, they have long-term versus short-term issues and things. But the only way a mentor years ago, whether he knew it or didn't know it, instinctively told me when I'm in a meeting with business owners to write a line down the center of the paper. I think I said this on the last phone call. And on the left side, put great ideas, things that I like. And on the right side of the piece of paper, put to-dos. And for me, that's been a trick that I've used with Jared. Some of the people on this phone call, you probably don't know that. But that's the only way for me to separate what's great ideas from a person like Jared versus stuff we're actually going to do. And some of the great ideas have been in the melting pot. The school and things have been in the melting pot for 4 years now.
Sure.
Versus me going back to you and saying, hey, Jared, here's the 15 things that you rifled off the other day. I think this one is important, but do you have anything else? The same thing as the dot game. I just put my mental dots on what I think is an actual to do, and then I still have to go back with you and double check.
So can you share a little bit about the school and how at one time we thought that was the next thing and
Yeah, absolutely.
signed a
So,
big lease? And
yeah, anybody that knows Jared, obviously, like I said, he's a big dreamer. He's an aggressive dreamer, and still a dream that I think is actually currently happening, just not in the facet that we originally prescribed, was the idea of a school, no different than like hair school. Is we figured the future of audiology is really to get as many kids as we possibly can to fly to us here in Utah, young individuals, people looking for careers, anybody that wanted a job in audiology, have them come here, live here for weeks or months at a time, coach them up, train them up, make sure that they're ready for the world, and then find them a job. And we would have enough connections with the coaching clients that we could get them in a job in just about any state that they would most likely want a job in. And we had curriculum built out. We had the courses built out. We had instructors hired at that time. And we were on the course to be ready. And then we decided that wasn't the single most important thing that we could do with our time, which was another really tough.
that was probably about this clarity break in March last year,
It probably
poolside,
was about
wasn't
a
it?
year ago.
Yeah.
That wasn't an easy subtraction, but at the end of the day, making money on a school and starting a new venture versus swipe file 5X and increasing the profitability of the clinics,
Sure.
it just got trumped. So it wasn't an easy conversation by any means.
But I hope you know it's not dead.
It's dead, but not dead. I know what you mean. It's dead to me. But at the same time, we still have students coming. And we just had a student here last week from Northern Utah that was here for 3 days. So I would consider that
It exists in some realm. I had a great conversation with Trista up in Richfield, and she's
right.
has some great input. She's doing some stuff with local high schools up there in a mentorship program. I mean, that's why I said it's not dead to me. It's just, it's been moved down the priority list because we've refocused, because we've subtracted some things, because we've delegated some things, we've combined some things. That one's been moved. And right, I think, isn't that a frustration with people around me? Like Jared's a moving target.
Yeah.
Right. Jared's always changing, and it's a constant recalibration.
Yeah. And I think that with the same thing that you said to Chris of the idea of Jared's always changing and moving and shaking. Well, you are. I mean, you can say we haven't changed audiology, we haven't changed growing and scaling businesses, and all those things are true. But on any given day, we might change building locations. We might change where the office opens or closes, things like that. But they need to know what's staying the same. The people in your business need to know what's staying the same. And I think that's one thing that you're really good at, is making sure that they understand the same way you told Chris of here's what's staying the same.
Sure.
And I think that's not always easy to.
And it takes a lot of work. If you look back at, what our group does, from mastering mindset, right, to communicating a proper culture, to monetizing marketing, right, to knowing and building and specializing in your science, those 4 pillars, right, apply to every business owner. And that's why we have accountants, we have small business owners, we have automation people, graphic artists, real estate agents, chiropractors, dental, med spas, audiology, is because those pillars support the small businesses in America. And those small business owners can learn from what we've done. So if you're a student that asks the right questions, that takes the principles from these weekly calls and applies them to your business, you will get traction, right? So when you look at what's next for us, is there things that even in this week, Morgan, have died or have been subtracted from what we're doing in the future?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, we run the very same L10s that we tell all of our clients to run. We run them as a group every single Monday morning. And I think our issues list went from like 45 issues down to about 3 in probably 15 minutes of us just saying that's not important, or switch to long term.
Switch them to rock, switch them to long term, switch them to this is a 3-year plan, a 10-year plan.
Yeah. But it takes intention and it takes focus. Us as a team saying, you put that on there, what did you mean by that? IDS, no, that's not real. It's actually a to-do for you. It's not actually an issue that we're all needing to solve.
For somebody that's been in my clinics, right? So you've been you've been my right hand now for, I'm gonna get this wrong, you'll be mad, 5-6 years.
Sure, I'll take it. 6.
So that's been right there and been in the clinics as a director of operations, right? You've seen We were just talking yesterday about some toxic managers I had, 5, 6, 7 years ago. You've seen that. You've seen partners come and go. You've seen me cut off whole businesses.
Yeah.
You've seen me sell businesses. You've seen me close clinics. You've seen me not buy clinics.
Yeah.
Is there something when it comes to people, right? That's your specialty. What is it when it comes to people? And I know I just read your new white paper on firing, but what is it with people, and how do you help people and everyday team members? Because I know we have some team members on here.
Yeah.
How do you help them subtract in a healthy way around their owners?
Yeah, yes, that's so true. And I think what Jared's speaking to is, I think what most people see if you're a business owner on this phone call and you decide you're right, Jared's right, I need to subtract some nonsense out of my life. I need to do delegate, delete. I read Pumpkin Plan, I'm all in. And you go back into your business and you start taking phones away from people, which he's done, by the way. He's ripped the
I
phone
subtracted
out.
phones.
Yeah, physically, the cords out of the wall. If you go back and do that, what does your staff see? Your staff sees the owner coming into the business and changing things yet again, chaos first and foremost. 2, I failed. 3, I did something wrong. 4, I'm in trouble. 5, I'm getting fired. That I can tell you that is where their mind goes, because I've seen it time and time again, not just in his practice, but in a lot of your businesses as well. So I think what you really have to avoid when you're going to go in and you're going to subtract from an employee's plate, when you're going to take away because their arms are too full or you want them to focus on the single most important part of their job, is you need to focus on their strengths. If you go in there and you start talking about their weaknesses or why you're taking things away or why the need for subtraction, and you need to go in there and explain to them why this single most important thing that they need to do is going to benefit the whole entire company, the patients, the product you sell, your clients, the benefit that we're going to receive as a whole, because you're going to go and do this one single thing for me and take away all the others, and how positive that is. What I see most people do, you've done it, I've done it, is we go in and we start taking away and say, look, I'll do this, let's give this to this, I'll hire somebody to do that. And all they see is I failed. And where their mindset goes quickly after that is I'm in trouble and I'm going to get fired. And that is the quickest way to ruin employees. So if you're going to go in and subtract, if you're going to subtract for yourself, hopefully we've done a good job tonight explaining where that starts, of starting with your why for the business, finding out what is the single most important part of your business. If you're going to go in and subtract for your employees, I can't urge you enough to focus on the positive and make sure that you go in there and you talk to them about the benefits of focusing on the one thing and how good and how excited you are to have them focus on that one thing, because it's going to be so amazing for them, you, the business, the clients, the patients, whoever it is that you're working with and working for.
I love that. And I think everybody, chat in if you plan to remove something from your team's plate. If there's something that can be removed that's not the single most important thing in your practice. In the last 12 months, we've removed reviews. We've removed annual hearing test calls. We've removed video testimonials because we have so many, right? Is anybody going to read all 985 reviews in St. George, Utah? Never going to happen.
No.
I think we have
and
enough.
no one's going to ever get to
and
that
nobody's
point.
going to catch up. So video testimonials, we got up to, I think, 163, and we removed that number because it's no longer most important and nobody's going to watch them. Right. So there's always something in your practice to remove. I remember years ago, it was removing the responsibility to clean the office.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cleaning the office, wiping the doors, Windexing, vacuuming. We hired cleaning crews. We removed that. We subtracted that responsibility from our front office managers.
Yeah.
Right. And said, your most important is patient care. I will take that off your plate. Make sense?
Totally.
So, but what about for team members? How does a team member raise their hand to, right? We talked about unhealthy owners a few weeks ago.
Yep.
So how do you, the team member, how have you done it effectively besides the time you quit on me? How do you effectively say, that's not for me, that's not my core responsibility, I need this off my plate so I can focus on that? Yeah,
the best thing you can do, if you have a good team, if you have a great team culture, and I'm an employee of yours and I'm feeling stressed out, overworked, like I'm at my max and I'm at my quitting point, my breaking point, you're hoping that on an L10, if you have the right culture, which we didn't have years ago, we didn't have L10, we didn't
when
have
you quit.
Yeah, is in an L10, what they should be doing is saying, hey, I see this issue. I see what we're talking about. I know where this is going, but I just want to stress to everybody that this isn't my roles and responsibilities. So yet again, in that entrepreneur operating system, there's roles and responsibilities under each person's name. So if I look up my name in that software, I have 5 or 6 things I should be focusing on. So if cleaning the office isn't one of those 5 or 6 things, it's easy for me to say, hey, we need to figure this out another way because it's not in my roles and responsibilities. Now, if we're going to add it, let's talk about that. Otherwise, let's focus on giving it to somebody else. So
Sure.
if you have that tool, you should be using that tool and you should be using that culture. If you don't have that, similar to how we didn't have that years ago, the best thing you can do is one-on-one meetings with your staff. So like Chris already talked about how he's having weekly meetings with the staff. If you're not meeting one-on-one with your staff, like Jared has his people ask him all the time, can we just have 15-minute huddles, you and I, so I can just brainstorm with you, get clarity on things, because he's not a clarity driven person. He's not a detail oriented person where maybe they are. You should be one-on-one with the staff without a doubt.
Well, and I mean, Chris typed in, right? He found that DO in his practice down in Southern California, down in the San Diego area. And since he found that person, new culture, new people, saying no to his crazy ideas, right? Getting him traction, right? Adding clinics, right? And that's why I said, if we look at the people that show up to masterminds, the people that take advice, the people that implement these principles, they work in every niche. Today, I was ready to go sign a restaurant client. We went up on the hill, and the gal that checked us in, I don't think she knows what the single most important thing of her job was, right? She made, I think, 10 groups of 2 people or 3 people each. She made all of us wait at the entry with the door cracked open, wind coming in, while all the tables were still empty. And she was buzzing around and doing this and doing that. And nobody probably recalibrated with her that the single most important thing at a lunch rush at a nice restaurant is to sit
them down. Yeah, sit them down. Because I'd rather sit in my seat than sit at the front. Yeah.
And how easy of a recalibration would that have been? That I understand you have to wipe the counter off, which she did, and you have to, do this and that. But the single most important thing is that those paying customers get sat, get water, get bread, and they're off to the races.
And I think the same is true for Chris. Like Chris chatted in and said, I found a DO that's really good at telling me no. Is you have to say though, you have to articulate that to the people you're hiring. Like again, the person I was helping hire with this new audiologist, you have to tell these people, I'm going to teach you how to do real ear. But understand your number one job in my office is to start treatments. I'm going to teach you about cognitive view, Jared, but don't forget your number one job in my office is to start treatment. And the same is true for your DO. Hey DO, I want you to take this class on hiring or interview or anybody, the Ritz-Carlton class, but don't forget your number one job in my office is to make sure that my business grows and scales to the way that I want it to grow and scale. So don't get distracted in the nuances. And I think we have to just continue to tell our employees that.
Well, and you look at, I just love the example of real estate because that's where my mind and energy is right now in a marketing this week and next week down in Phoenix is marketing OTC for audiology, creating a customer lifetime journey for accountants, and really taking and building the first fully automated marketing system like we did in audiology 6 and 7 years ago in real estate. So in these conversations, and as I dive deeper and deeper into the buying cycle, the training cycle, the operations of a real estate brokerage, right, I had to go back to and say, what does the owner, the broker, want the most important thing for her to be, right? And so the most important for her was to train and mentor her staff. So what we're subtracting from her by platforming with us, what we're subtracting from her plate is everything marketing.
And
Hiring with you, marketing with me.
Take all that off of her.
Training
plate.
with Reese, the 19 agents or whatever we're with Reese. So now if we free up her time, she can focus on, once the hires are done, training and turning more agents, because we said earlier, agents make money in real estate, turning more agents into the growth that she wants, right? So we're subtracting from her plate. We're not like deleting it, we're subtracting it from her plate. And we're going to do that over and over again within the business until everybody is aligned. Where we go back weeks. What's the purpose, right? Are we aligned? Are we calibrated? Do we have a consistent process and approach? And now we're going to be off to the races. And as more and more gets piled on our plates, we have to be willing to subtract. We have to be willing, if you read my weekly facts weeks ago, you have to be willing to kill good ideas, because Dr. Turi and Kim Garrett and all the people that we work with are amazing idea people. That's why you are successful business people. But now you have to subtract things, delegate things until you get the traction and speed you want. When you have traction and speed and money flowing, then you can either bolt things on or start new businesses. And now you have multiple streams of income that you can take and invest. You can take and start another business. And next thing you know, you're building a legacy of charitable giving. You're building a legacy of real estate. You're building a family legacy. And we're talking about generational wealth. We're not talking about a well-paid job.
Yeah, I love it. Is it fair to say, Jared, to wrap this thing up then, if you're going to believe in the idea of subtraction and you're going to use that philosophy in your business and in your life, because some of you probably have some people in your life that you need to subtract as well. But if you're going to subscribe to this idea of subtraction, the first step is really having an honest and true why, a direction for the company and why you do what you do, because otherwise all of the other wheels are going to fall off.
Yep, a stated vision and a stated purpose that's written and shared by all.
And then you can make decisions based on that. So if you're struggling to say, I don't know what I should subtract from my life, I don't know what I should subtract from my employee's life, I know my employee's stressed out, but I don't know what to take away, it might be because you need to back up and establish what is the most important part of my business for this person. Because if you don't have that identified for your employee, you're not going to know what they should be focusing on.
And like I said, if you've seen me, I've chased away good employees. My management team has walked out. I've put more chaos into my multiple businesses, right? I've had partners that have put bad chaos that we had to eliminate. The number one thing I can tell you is pick that vision, have a stated vision and purpose, write it down, share it with everybody. Then anytime a new idea, a new problem, a new concern comes up, write it down, have that quarterly planning session with your team to decide what are the most important, and then subtract the others.
Yeah. Learn how to say no.
Learn how to say no. So looking forward to next weekend. This coming weekend is the Marketing Implementation Bootcamp. If you haven't joined, audiologymarketingtoolbox.com will get you to the registration page. We have a clarity break next week where we're going to brainstorm 50 new ideas for what we're doing in the future with investing, what we're doing with expansion, what we're doing in coaching, what we're doing with the EIA National Network. And then Morgan's going to sit there and subtract all the good ideas, and I'm going to be left with one or two to focus on. And then we have our first mastermind. If you're a private coaching client, the 11th and 12th, hope to see as many of you there as possible. We're going to dive pretty deep and have a lot of fun subtracting.
Yeah, make sure you come to Phoenix with your biggest stucks. So we can really help you focus.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.